Hello there guys, it's Joey. Welcome back. Today's video is going to be entitled something along the lines of Goddess Morrigan, your evil and other insults. So, I don't know about you guys, but particularly video makers or maybe vloggers or so on and so forth, people who express their opinions in a public realm about matters of spirituality, I guess. I was going to make a completely different video this morning, etching into this afternoon actually, and I was going to actually catch up with the YouTube Pagan Challenge and do all the grimoires in one go, and I may do that this afternoon depending on time. And something kind of came up and came up and came up and has been coming up, and I was like, no, I think I've got to talk about this instead, because this is clearly being poked at by the universe, by the goddess, to talk about over and over and over again, so we're doing it. And I'm not quite sure how this video will shape up, because it's just going to be me expressing some thoughts and feelings, and it could get emotional. We'll find out. And it's all kind of topical. And the theme behind it is that there has been a lot of outside noise with regards to judgment and accusational judgment being thrown around, bandied around, and unfortunately the atmosphere right now is kind of toxic anyway. Some things, okay, in the political sphere people are very, very divided. People feel very, very strongly about certain issues. I feel very strongly about certain issues. I've tried to express how I feel about certain issues, such as, you know, women marching for women's rights, which I support in person. You know, I supported, and that sort of thing. So there is kind of like this atmosphere of fog going on around now, and by fog I mean mutant, toxic, nasty ick that's probably affecting us all, making us not our best selves right now, making us agitated, making us horrified, making us knock things over, making us angry, making us volatile. But to sort of add to this, there's this kind of okay. I was sort of downloading information there, sorry. There's been kind of like this atmosphere where people keep sort of flinging things to do with which god or goddess you work with in sort of the accusational, derogatory tone of things. And so this video is basically, what do I do to cope with this? How do you cope when somebody is trying to degrade your relationship with deity? Now, I'm going to be talking about the Morrigan for obvious reasons, and I've seen a whole lot of it. I've been the target of a whole lot of it. And I started this week with the accusation of being evil, which was thrilling. And actually, I pulled an oracle card for this week. I managed to get back onto the story oracle this week, which is available on the blog if you're interested in reading the whole thing. And it was the Black Tulip this week, and I'm going to read a couple of excerpts which I think are really important to the overall topic. Perceived evil is so easily done and so easily bandied about. This week started for this witch with a stranger declaring me to be evil because I didn't believe in the same religion as they. So they decided to attack, spear, wound as best they could based on that prejudice. Ultimately, I feel that people who need to propagate their agenda thusly are actually lashing out at something they see within themselves, some ugliness or some failure, and so on and so forth. And then the overall message of the oracle card is that love can conquer all, starlet, even hate. And then another thought, which I actually put on Facebook, which is when people try to use your spirituality against you, saying you have no relationship with insert deity, I have found the best and truest answer is that internal smile that says, clearly, you know nothing. And over the process of time, I've heard many accusations, both at myself and then other people, with regards to you're not allowed to work with the Goddess Morrigan because, or you are lying about working with the Morrigan because. Before we get into that side of things, I'm going to say that I don't think it's necessarily true that the Goddess Morrigan is an all-inclusive goddess, because I don't think she is. I don't think she speaks to everyone. I have said on many occasions that she chooses her sons and daughters. She chooses who to work with, and she doesn't really take no for an answer in most cases. Not if this is your truest, highest calling. I've talked about in the past how she comes into some people's lives and then leaves, so she sort of pays them a visit, helps them deal with certain issues perhaps, but it's not a long-standing arrangement. And even within those who follow her for life, she's not constantly dialed up to 100, if you like, dialed up to 11, because she does this thing where she waxes and wanes, and she'll sit back and be the silent watcher, as the phrase from the mythos goes. And I find that is a very integral part of her path, is understanding the ebbs and flows and why that is so, and what you're learning from kind of being dumped on your own for a bit, to put things mildly. And I don't think that everybody should try to work with the Goddess Morrigan, because depending on where you are, who you are, what you're doing, how you react to certain situations, it might just not be the right fit for you, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Like, if you say this in a lot of places, you will have people up in arms because you've said you can't work with the Morrigan, and that's not what we're getting at. We're like, there is a path, like Flora says, you know, there's a road path up the mountain for everybody, and they're all different, but that doesn't make them any less valid. It doesn't make any one vision of deity any less valid than another. What is less valid is this idea that it's my way or the highway, so you're evil, so get out, so get lost. And it's like, you're giving me a headache. Please go away and find out what's going on within yourself that you can't be accepting for anything outside your own peripheral vision. So this is, you can tell, has been an issue this week, and it continues to be an issue. So yeah, 1 second, I shall have a sip of water. We shall punctuate with water. La la la. Welcome back from the intermission. Anyway, so here are some examples of things that I have heard that are either directed at me or at other people over the years. You can't work with Morrigan, you're a man. Checking, no, I'm female, we're fine. Nothing's changed. So that one's not aimed at me. Or you cannot work with the Morrigan if you are transgender. You cannot work with the Morrigan if you are LGBT, and I have addressed that in a whole video about how I feel about that particular accusation in the past. So, you know, we don't need to go on about that. You cannot work with the Morrigan if you are not Irish. You cannot work with the Morrigan if you are not from a Celtic land-based mass from the ancestral point of view. From the Celts. Now, a lot of people don't bother to look into it, but you know, you have Germanic Celts, you have Celts in Ireland, you had Celts in Wales, and arguably, you know, they're going to have encroached into Britain of all, and Scotland completely, you know, because I can't imagine people didn't cross these borders. No, they completely stayed in these completely points of land. They never ever intermingled, they never traded, they never married, they never encroached, they never went to war with each other. That doesn't sound quite right, does it? So that's another one. And then that kind of unfortunately gets into a whole kind of racist side of things, that people of certain orientations may not work with the Morrigan, and she would never call to them because of the colour of your skin. And these are all horrifying things, by the way. I think they're all revolting. What else have I'm trying to think. Oh, the kind of evil thing kind of works both ways. Like I'm trying to make out that she's evil or then that you're evil, and you know, and then you're not. I don't know. You're not knowledgeable enough. You're not learned enough. You're not sticking to the mythos enough to follow the Goddess Morrigan. You're too weak to follow the Goddess Morrigan. You don't know how to defend yourself with a blade, so you can't follow the Goddess Morrigan. You have depression or anxiety, you can't follow the Morrigan. I'm trying to think, is that it? Is that all of the ones that I've heard? There are a whole plethora of, it's like a plethora of bullshit. A plethora of bullshit. That it tries to segregate, it tries to demean, it tries to wound your relationship with deity. And it doesn't really matter which deity we're talking about. Now, I've written in the past about how I feel about honouring the Goddess Morrigan with your actions and your deeds, and I think that sometimes people have to have a real conversation because they feel like the actions don't mirror the words, the intentions, and that if you are saying that you are upholding a particular lifestyle, a particular way of walking, a witchcraft path, but you're not living that, you're not reflecting a sense of what the path is about, and therefore you're kind of degrading what the path is about, that becomes an issue. And things like that, you can draw examples. So, you know, people who are like hardcore racists and then claim that that's a Nordic path thing. And you know, that's a big cause of shame for a lot of Nordic pagans who are like, this is nothing to do with what the Nordic path is about for me. That's a slightly different example because I know that it's public, I guess. People know about it. And those sorts of behaviours are not something that is good for the overall humanity of a spiritual path. And ultimately, walking a spiritual path is about humanity. Humanity and spirituality in a weaving and a meshing and a coming together of a better understanding of what ourselves and spirituality and deity, of trying to be the best version of ourselves. And we can't be the best version of ourselves while we're pointing our fingers saying, you can't work with the Morrigan because, or you bring shame to your house. Wait, what? I think we went Game of Thrones. Hang on, reel it back in. So I'm going to address a few. I kind of don't feel the need to go on at length about being evil. I had a really nice comment from a young man whose name I won't mention because I don't want to embarrass him in case he'd be embarrassed. But he was like, I don't perceive you as being evil, I perceive you as being powerful and beautiful. I was like, oh, that's the nicest thing anyone said all week. And people are threatened by it. And I was like, that's him, not me. Like, I consider myself okay looking and chaotic. It's kind of how I evaluate myself. So how I kind of feel about when people are like, you're evil, is like there's something deeply wrong on the inside if you are looking at other human beings and you're labeling them as evil, because that kind of accusational I don't know, help me out here. Misguided, judgmental nonsense, I guess. It kind of takes the human out of the equation. It's like showing a complete lack of empathy. Like, oh, you're evil because you follow this. That means that they are taking away your humanity from an equation. And anything and everything that makes you a person, makes you a good person, your emotions, good and bad. I don't believe in bad emotions for the most part, unless you get poisoned by them, but that's by the by. And it just basically is trying to dehumanize you, because if you're evil, then they can judge you and they can get one up on you and feel better than you. And it's really self-serving, again, plethora of bullshit. And it's so heartless. There's been so much heartlessness this week that it's kind of driven me to this kind of video. That's the face for the video, by the way. And just why? Because it isn't what you believe. It's evil. I feel like Dr. Evil. Evil, the Diet Coke of evil. Just 1 calorie, not nearly enough. Yeah. So the other side of this is you're not strong enough to be the goddess's daughter or son. You don't display fearlessness enough to be the goddess's daughter, and I've had this said to me. I'll let that sink in for a minute. I suffer with depression and anxiety, and I tend to find when people are saying this sort of thing, it's because you haven't done exactly what you do in the way that they wanted you to do it, and therefore they know that you have a strong love for your deity, and so to try and demean that relationship, trying to make out that you failed your goddess by not doing something rather than them. Now, if you have failed another individual, that's between you two, and for something for you two to either work on together, sort out, fix and resolve, or just leave it. And it's not necessarily anything to do with deity. My sister was talking to me about this, my actual sister, my blood sister, this morning, and she was like, she was getting irate. She was like, why do people think that the minute they have been given money, it's to do with the how, what did she say, how obedient they've been to their God. It's like people, now the example in question was a Christian person, so apologies to Christian people who would cringe at this, but the kind of people who are like, hail Jesus, I got enough money to pay for my car. That's Jesus's doing. My sister was like, why would Jesus care if you had money for a car? Surely that would be polluting the planet. Surely you would be better off showing how much you appreciate Jesus by carrying out good works in his name or something along those lines, rather than it being about you, money, a car. And that's what we were talking about. You know, that kind of self-serving religion where it's about, oh, well, I got a material item of choice, therefore my religion is sound, when really spirituality is supposed to be about helping each other out rather than lauding one's spiritual prowess or material possession over one another in any path. Now, don't go down the other end to the cult end where you must own nothing but the cult will take all your money, because that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is there's kind of like this disconnect here somewhere, where it becomes all about oneself rather than one's connection to what the connection to spirituality, deity, God, goddess actually is, which is a wholeness and a journey of wholeness. It's like we're not going to be complete. I don't think we're complete in one lifetime, which is a personal belief, and I think that many reincarnations makes more sense to me, because I think there are many, many, many lessons to be learned, many, many lives to be led, and one lifetime isn't enough, anywhere near enough, to even gain a remote understanding of what it means to be human. I think we do the best with what we've got in the time that we've got, and we all experience, oh God, you're leaning heavily on me if I'm going to cry thinking about this. Sorry, I cry when Morrigan leans on me for a message, and it's about learning all those many, many lessons over time. And I don't think that being weak at any given point is derogatory in the name of the Goddess Morrigan, because you kind of have this sort of presentation that in order to follow the Goddess Morrigan you have to be hard all the time. And there are people who perpetuate that belief, and it kind of dehumanizes them, I guess. But they kind of don't want it to dehumanize them. They kind of want it to elevate them and make them look badass or whatever. And I really don't believe in that. I think that moments of weakness, moments of failure, are some of the most spiritual moments of our lives. I think that defeat is not the failure. Defeat is not the falling down. Defeat is not necessarily even the full-on messy, chaotic mistake that you may have made. It's not even the shame that you may have suffered. It's how you proceed from that point. It's whether or not you lie there and give up, or you keep going. You get up, you keep fighting. You're saying, yeah, okay, this situation sucked. This situation tore my heart to a million pieces. This situation was entirely my fault and I completely screwed that up. But I don't give up. I don't fall down and not get up. I don't dismiss my part in this. I don't blame shift. I don't seek to remove my responsibility from my life. And it's okay not to understand every little thing that you're coming into possession of in terms of the spiritual path, because you might not get everything straight away, and you might have the same lesson slapped around your face until you find a different way of dealing with it that kind of is better for you as an individual, as a person, as a human. And to me, this is kind of climaxed, if you like, in what I shared on Facebook, which was the best way to deal with this is that kind of inner smile, this internal smile, which is like, you don't know anything then. You don't know anything about me then. If you honestly feel that you can come into my life and tell me that I don't have a relationship with the Goddess Morrigan. Because I know I do. And that's not up for debate. And the only person who can really, truly make you doubt that is yourself. If you're doubting that relationship yourself, then other people coming in will affect you. Now, that's not necessarily something that you should then be ashamed of. You should then look at the root of that. Why are you doubting it? Now, the Goddess Morrigan is a very good example of this, because a lot of people want very deeply to work with her and they're not. And then, you know, that kind of feeds into that doubt, because they know that deep down it's just not the fit for them. And that, unfortunately, is something that's a very difficult conversation to have with anybody, because then they get angry, they get agitated, they get upset because they feel like they're undeserving. And it's nothing to do necessarily with undeservingness. It's to do with fit. It's to do with finding the right path rather than the one that you covet. And for me, I didn't know who the Goddess Morrigan was before she turned up in my life. Now, she'd always been in my life, but I knew her as mother. So I didn't know who Morrigan was until all was sort of like peeled back, scales fell away from my eyes, and I was like, that's who you are. And yes, that's who I am. And I'm getting like this pat on my head, like, finally, like, well done. The other circumstance is as this ebb and flow that happens with the Goddess Morrigan, that it's one of those times where she's having some stepping back time, and that can be to do with kind of analysing where you're at, being the silent watcher, allowing you to learn the lesson, allowing you to digest the lesson, seeing how you're going to react to the lesson, seeing if you've learnt your lesson yet, and so on and so forth, seeing where you're at, and allowing you to struggle with it often, because that's the best way to get you to evolve. Metamorphosis is a key word in a lot of Morriganic practice, and metamorphosis is a painful, painful, painful process for us as people. If you take the example of the caterpillar and the butterfly, everyone's like thinking, oh, cocoon and fine, and it's fine. There's a whole liquidation process that goes on in that cocoon. It's a whole breaking down of everything in a re-emerging and re-cohesion into something else. It's not an easy process. It's backbreaking, it's soul shattering, it's hurtful. It hurts, it's going to slap you down on occasion. Not always, but you know, the big lessons do. And so it is fine to have moments of sadness, of anger, of jealousy, of weakness. And it's not okay for anyone else to come in and say to you, well, you had this moment of weakness where you did this thing wrong, so therefore you can't call yourself a follower of Morrigan, whoever, because you were wrong in this instance, because you were weak in this instance, because you failed in this instance. Failure is a lesson. Without lessons, we don't grow. And I really... I don't like it. I don't like this kind of idea that somehow we have to be above the emotional states. We have to be above life to be spiritual. That's to me not what a pagan is about. That's not to me what a daughter of the Morrigan or son of the Morrigan is about. It's not what witchcraft is about. My path is down and dirty. It's fingers in the ground. I've got a poem about that. I might put that up on the blog. I'll put that up on the blog following this. And it's about the roots of all things, as well as the flowers and the leaves, which is something we're going to talk a little bit more about. And we started talking a little bit about in the Shadow Ogham video, which is the first part of the first Shadow Ogham is already on the blog. And that's talking about the fact that there is a shadow side to everything. There is a difficult side to everything. There is a balance within nature as well as within ourselves. So as we have moments of pure triumph, of victory, and if you want to put it into a very Morriganic sense, Morrigan oversees in the Celtic lore battles of all kind, and she would influence both sides, winner and loser. And that would mean that somebody who had her influence on some level was meant to lose that battle. And that loss could be a hugely spiritual moment of life-altering realness, I guess. You know, this is who you want to become. Well, this is who you're not going to become, and this is like holding a big mirror to you, like, this was a mistake that you needed, this was a fall down that you needed, this was something that you needed to experience in order so that next time you're not going to make that mistake anymore. And that to me is Morriganic. That is owning your mistakes, that is owning your fuck-ups, that is owning the times that you have bloodied yourself and kind of embarrassed yourself or anything. And that doesn't take away from your path, it adds to it. If only you can take the lesson from it. And you might be like I am and be completely stubborn and realise only after about the third or fourth time where the lesson is and be like, right, got it, okay. And then you have to internalise it, because, you know, when you're particularly emotive, or if you suffer from anxiety or depression, it can be really, really difficult to learn certain lessons because of the emotional response to certain things is kind of out of key, you know, out of balance. So you have to find different ways to deal with situations. And that, again, is spiritual as far as I'm concerned. There's nothing unspiritual about that. It doesn't not make you a child of spirituality in any sense. It just means that you're human. And again, for the millionth time, I swear, we are souls having a human experience, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. I hope again, it's all opinion, and but this is something I feel really strong about, and be good to each other. Be excellent to each other, I guess. So that's it for this video. Many blessings.